Blackwater Bar wasn't the kind of place someone like Camilla usually ended up in. It was the type of bar where heads stayed down, everyone minded their own business, and carried on as if nothing out of the ordinary was happening. Camilla wasn't here for the atmosphere, though. She just needed one night out. One night to stop overthinking, overworking, and over everything. She slipped inside, scanning the room. The lighting was dim, the slow hum of conversation punctuated by clinking glasses. She found a quiet spot at the bar, ordered a drink, and tried to settle into the background. That's when she noticed him. Rylan Dane was tucked into a corner, half in the shadows, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. First she barely registered him, but as she took a sip of her drink, she realized he was staring. Not just glancing, not just noticing. There was something in his gaze that felt different. It wasn't curiosity or scrutiny. It was the kind of gaze that made her feel acknowledged, as if he could see past every carefully constructed layer she hid behind and somehow still found her intriguing. There was weight to it, a precision, as if he were assessing more than the moment itself. She tried to ignore it, focusing on her drink and telling herself it was just her imagination. That was when the drunk guy approached. Friendly at first, leaning a little too close. "Hey there," he slurred. "Mind if I join you?" Camilla smiled politely, giving short, careful answers. She wasn't interested. She tried to edge away, but he persisted. When her disinterest became clear, he grabbed her wrist with a sloppy, insistent grip. Before she could react, Rylan was suddenly there. Calm, solid, controlled, like a storm barely contained beneath the surface. He stepped in close, his presence shifting the mood around them instantly. Let her go. That was all it took. The guy dropped her wrist and stumbled backwards. Camilla whispered, "Thanks," still startled. Rylan didn't respond. He didn't smile. He just studied her for a moment, that same unreadable, intense look. It wasn't about being a hero. It was something else. "You don't belong here," he said finally. "People shouldn't be in places where they're unprepared for the unexpected." And just like that, he walked away, leaving Camilla shaken, intrigued, and suddenly very aware of the strange pull he seemed to have over the room. A week later, she found herself at the door of Blackwater Bar again. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the strange pull the place had on her. Or maybe it was the man she couldn't stop thinking about. Inside, the atmosphere was calmer than before. A slow song drifted through the speakers, and most customers seemed lost in their own thoughts. Camilla slipped onto a bar stool and ordered a drink, trying to blend in. She hadn't been there long when she noticed him again. Rylan Dane, tucked into a corner, half in the shadows, arms crossed. The same guarded look. And this time she realized it was directed at her. Watching, assessing like no one else in the room existed. A few minutes passed. A sudden noise broke out from a nearby table. A chair scraped sharply against the floor. A bottle clattered. A voice rose low, irritated. Rylan's posture changed instantly. Slight lift of his shoulders. A subtle shift of stance. Bracing for something he had expected. Then the tall, dangerous-looking man locked eyes with Rylan. Boots hitting the floor, moving with purpose. Everyone froze. The man swung. Fast. Hard. But Rylan was faster. One moment he stood, the next he was on the floor, groaning, defeated. The bar erupted into chaos. Chairs crashed, drinks spilled, shouts filled the air. Panic surged through Camilla as the crowd became a moving wave of chaos. Her heart pounded. She had no clear way out. Then she felt it before she saw it. A calm, solid presence at her side. Rylan. Silent, steady, as if he had been waiting for this exact moment. Without a word, he extended his hand. "Come on." Instinct took over. She grabbed it and let him lead her through a side door hidden behind crates, away from the screaming, shoving crowd. Outside, the cool night air hit her sharp and real. She gasped, trying to steady her racing heart. Rylan stepped back just far enough to watch her. The same unreadable, intense stare that made her feel like she was both seen and guarded at once. Camilla's mind spun. She didn't know who he really was, what he had faced, or why he was so dangerous. All she knew was that he had just saved her, and somehow that changed everything. The storm he carried. It wasn't over yet. Camilla returned to Blackwater Bar the next evening. Not because she felt fearless, but because gratitude had a way of pulling her back. The place was quieter than usual, the dim light softening the edges of the room. She found Rylan on his way out, heading through the back door. She walked up to him and thanked him for the other night. She even asked why that guy tried to fight him, but he didn't answer. He just looked at her with that same unreadable stare, like he was weighing every word she said. Then he asked why she was so stubborn and why she kept coming back to a place she clearly didn't fit into. His voice carried a strict edge. Camilla told him she had as much right to be in the bar as anyone else. And if the place was so dangerous, why didn't he take his own advice and stay away too? "The bar belongs to me," he said. A small laugh slipped from her. She hadn't expected that at all. Rylan didn't react. He just watched her like amusement was something he didn't remember how to feel. He walked toward his motorcycle, a sleek, powerful thing that suited him perfectly. Before getting on, he told her again to stay away from the bar. It didn't sound like a warning. It sounded more like something he didn't want to admit out loud. She tried to lighten the mood and asked if she could get a ride since he wanted her gone before tomorrow. "No," he said sharply. He told her he was the last person she should be around. Trouble followed him too closely, like a second shadow. She rolled her eyes, called him rude, and turned to leave. Something in him shifted then, maybe guilt, maybe instinct, maybe something else. He told her to get on. The ride was short but unforgettable. Wind rushing past, the steady strength of him in front of her, the city blurring like a secret they weren't ready to talk about. He dropped her at her doorstep without a word and was gone before she looked back. The next morning, Rylan found a note waiting for him at the bar. No name, no question about who had left it. "It's time to return what belongs to us. The clock is ticking. And by the way, tell your girlfriend we said hello." The words were written with a calmness that felt more dangerous than shouting. A threat disguised as courtesy. A reminder that they'd been close enough to see her. Rylan froze. It wasn't the threat that bothered him. He'd survived worse. But Camilla being dragged into his problems. Someone innocent pulled into a storm she never asked for, that was something he couldn't allow. For the first time in a long time, he felt something close to fear. Not for himself, for her. He knew he was never the type to feel a connection to strangers, which made this all the more unsettling. Control had always been his rule, distance his shield. Yet the note lingered in his mind, and Camilla's name kept echoing there, insistent, both a warning and a pull he couldn't ignore. 4 nights on end, he camped a few blocks away from her house, far enough to remain unseen, close enough to know she was safe. Every shadow, every flicker of movement near her house drew his attention. The city slept, but he didn't. It was starting to take its toll. Running Blackwater Bar became harder each day, but he knew he had to do what he had to do to keep Camilla safe. After all, he felt responsible that she'd been dragged into this because of him. One evening, as he tried to relax and ordered a drink, the bar door swung open. Camilla walked in. She moved with her usual light, carefree step, and her eyes immediately found his. Her smile was bright, wide, unaware. Then she noticed him. He looked tired. Not just the usual hard edge, but worn. Dark circles under his eyes, shoulders tighter than usual. Yet he still carried the weight of danger like a second skin. "You look stressed," she said softly, teasing. "Not sleeping well at night?" Rylan's jaw tightened. Every nerve was on alert. She had no idea. And strangely, that didn't make him angry, just more concerned. Before he knew it, the words left his mouth, sharper than he intended. "Why do you keep coming here? Don't you realize how much trouble you can get yourself into by being around me?" Camilla blinked, then rolled her eyes, unfazed. "You think I'm coming here to be around you? Think again. You started this by defending me the other day. I never asked for it. And do you have a problem with people being nice to you?" Rylan's fists clenched under the table. He should have walked away. He should have left her alone. But every instinct in his body screamed otherwise. "I already told you," he said quietly. "I'm trouble. Being near me won't do you any good. Now leave." That night, the city reminded them both why he was right. Shadows moved outside her house, figures with purpose and malice. They broke in before she even realized what was happening. Rylan was there in an instant, a phantom in the night. The intruders moved with alarming speed, but he anticipated each step, every move precise, every strike calculated. Camilla, shaking with fear, crouched behind the kitchen cabinet as she heard glass shattering and furniture breaking. Voices yelled, "We'll be back," before fleeing into the night. As silence filled the air, she slowly lifted her head and found Rylan standing in front of her, solid, unreadable, a shield she hadn't known she needed. He extended a hand. Tentatively, she took it, letting him pull her to her feet. She trembled, voice barely steady. "Rylan, who were those guys? What did they want? And what are you doing here? Did you know they were coming?" He didn't answer, not yet. There was no time for explanations. Every second counted. "Grab your things. You're coming with me." "Coming with you? To where? And why? How can you just come here and order me like that? I don't even know you. What is going on?" "You talk too much," he said flatly. "Just do as I say for once. I'll explain later." Her protests faded as she followed. The night swallowed them both. The city streets blurred past, shadows stretching long. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The danger was still close, but for now they were moving. And she was safe. Rylan's house surprised her. It was tucked on a quiet street, modern but subtle, clean lines, soft outdoor lighting, and a porch that looked inviting. When he opened the door, the warmth hit her immediately. Inside was simple but cozy. Soft lighting, a comfortable couch with a blanket tossed over the backrest, a few books stacked on a coffee table, the faint scent of cedar in the air. Everything felt calm, grounding, safe in a way she hadn't expected. He pointed her toward the spare room and told her she'd be staying there until things settled. She changed into something comfortable and climbed into bed, hoping the quiet would help. She tried to rest. She really did. But her mind wouldn't stop racing. After tossing and turning for what felt like hours, she finally slipped out of the room and padded quietly into the living space. The moonlight spilled through the window, and that's when she saw him. Rylan stood there, shoulders tense, staring out into the night as if listening for something far away. "Are you wondering if those guys will come here?" she whispered. "They dare not," he replied, still staring out the window. Camilla folded her arms. "Are you ready to answer my questions now? Because I think I deserve some. I mean, I have no idea what's going on. One minute I'm home and the next I'm running. And everyone seems to know what's happening except me." He finally turned toward her, his voice low but steady. "You want to know why trouble always seems to follow me? It started with my father." She stayed silent, giving him her full attention. He was the leader of a powerful organization, the kind that makes big decisions behind the scenes. Years ago, another high-ranking member of his circle owed him a large amount of money. They couldn't pay it back, so my father kept the land they had put up as collateral. His jaw tightened. That decision caused a split. Two sides emerged, and that land became the symbol of lost power and the rift between them. Eventually, tensions escalated, and my father was erased from the picture. Camilla's gaze fell, but she didn't interrupt. "I took over what he left behind," Rylan said, "and I built Blackwater Bar on that land." He shifted his gaze back to the window. "They hated that. And over the years, the area around the bar became high value, a prime location. Now they want it more than ever. They know they can't confront me directly, so they found a new tactic." Camilla stepped closer. "What do you mean?" Rylan looked straight at her. "The men who broke into your house, they sent me a message last week, and your name was in it. They must have seen us together and assumed you were connected to me. By being near me, you became a target. That's why I told you to stay away." She swallowed hard. "So how did you know they'd show up tonight?" "I didn't," he said. "That's why I kept watch. Every night. A few blocks from your place, since the note showed up." Camilla stared at him. "Are you serious? Why not tell me? We could have called the police." Rylan gave a small, tired side smile. "Are you new here?" "I moved here 3 months ago," she replied softly. "That explains it," he said quietly. "This city is run by several powerful groups. They each keep order in their own ways, and sometimes they work together. Because of that alliance, it's hard for one to act against another. So they tend to cover for each other instead." Camilla ran a hand through her hair. "So what do I do now?" "You'll stay here for a while," Rylan said. "We'll take it day by day. Try to get some sleep. You're coming with me to the bar in the morning." Over the next few weeks, their lives began to intertwine, subtle at first, then impossible to ignore. Rylan took Camilla everywhere. Not because he wanted to hover over her, but because the idea of leaving her alone, even for a short moment, tightened something deep in his chest. So she rode with him on the motorcycle to the bar, to the market, to pick up supplies everywhere. If she needed something, he got it. If she wanted something, he had it in her hands before she finished the sentence. And the surprising part? Camilla didn't mind. After years of handling life alone, guarding herself, relying on nobody, having someone so steady, so consistently protective, felt comforting. She liked the way he watched the world around her instead of watching her, sensing danger before it came close. She liked how he remembered small things she mentioned once and quietly made sure she never lacked for them. She liked feeling cared for. And Rylan adjusted just as quickly, even if he pretended otherwise. He had lived most of his life, never letting anyone close enough to matter. But Camilla slipped into his routines as if she had always belonged there. He learned the sound of her footsteps in the hallway, the soft hum she made when she was looking for something, the way her voice changed when she said his name, gentle, warm, affectionate. It was nothing like the world he grew up in. Felt amazing. But he never let himself fully relax. He couldn't, because he knew the rival circle was waiting, watching from the dark, patient enough to strike the moment he slipped. Still, between all the vigilance and tension, Camilla introduced him to pieces of life he never had the chance to experience. She made him morning tea the way she liked it, sweet, warm, calming. At first, he wasn't sure he'd like it, but soon he was finishing every drop without realizing it. She dragged him to a tiny bakery 2 blocks from the bar, a place he'd passed for years but never stepped into. He complained about the line and the crowd buzzing around them, until he tried a cinnamon roll and stood there in stunned silence, almost offended by how good it was. She made him watch old romance movies on her laptop, films she called mandatory classics. He'd sit beside her pretending to be uninterested, yet his eyes stayed glued to the screen every single time. She taught him how to slow down, just a fraction, just enough to breathe. Sometimes she'd catch him looking at her with that softened, unguarded expression he didn't even realize he had, and he'd instantly turn away, slipping on his cold mask again. But she'd already seen the truth behind it, and it lingered. And in those quiet moments, drinking her tea, letting her steal his jacket on cold nights, listening to her laugh over something small and silly, Rylan Dane felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. But peace never stayed for long in his world. And he knew this calm was only the silence before the storm. And Rylan was right. Since the rival circle couldn't get close to Camilla, they chose the next cruelest thing. They burned Rylan's house down while he was at the bar. The news hit him like a punch to the ribs. He didn't even remember getting on the motorcycle, only the roaring in his ears and the blur of streetlights whipping past. When he arrived, everything was gone. Only the remains of beams stuck up from the foundation, blackened and cracked. Charred fragments drifted down from what used to be the ceiling, thin, glowing embers twisting through the air like fireflies before they sank into the ash below. The smoke was already fading into the night, but the smell clung to everything. Rylan stood still, every muscle locked. He had seen destruction before, but this was different. He never thought the rival circle would cross this line, but they did. And now they would have to face the consequences. It was standard. Nothing any member of the circle wasn't already familiar with. Rylan was never one to make the first move, but he was always ready to answer. But this time it was complicated. Camilla was under his protection. If he acted, he'd be pulled away, and she'd be left vulnerable. If he didn't respond, the people loyal to him, loyal to his father, would move anyway. It didn't matter whether Rylan wanted peace. His circle wouldn't allow what happened to be brushed aside. Not the people who had followed him, because he always chose the fair path, even while being tied to the city's darker networks. And especially not the ones who had left the rival circle seeking a better life, people who'd walked away from the wrong side because they'd wanted out, wanted decency, wanted protection. All of them would demand action. And there was no place in the city where Camilla could be safe now. He stared at the ruins as flakes of burned wood drifted down like black snow. The place that had once been his refuge, reduced to nothing. Camilla wiped at her cheeks, but the tears kept falling. She had spent enough time with Rylan to understand how deep the message ran. She didn't ask who did it. She already knew. And the guilt hit her like a weight. If she hadn't entered his life, if she hadn't stepped into that bar weeks ago, maybe they would never have taken things this far. She looked at Rylan, unsure, almost afraid to touch him. She had no idea what storm he was holding back, or what it was doing to him inside. But just as she turned away, he stepped forward and gently gripped her shoulders. He pulled her in, steady, firm, grounding her even though he was the one who'd lost everything. He brushed her tears away with his thumb. His voice was low, rough, but warm. "Hey, look at me. You are not the cause of this. They made their choice, not you. You didn't ruin anything. You didn't start anything. And I'm not letting you carry blame that isn't yours." He cupped her cheek, steadying her trembling breath. "You're safe with me. That's the only thing that matters tonight." Her chest broke open at his words. Despite everything being taken from him because of her, near her he was still comforting her. Camilla collapsed into him, arms tight, tears shaking through her. "I'm so sorry," she whispered over and over. Rylan held her with both arms, strong and unshaken, like he could shield her from the entire world if he had to. He murmured soft reassurances, quiet and steady, until her sobs slowly faded. Only then, when her breathing evened out and her hands stopped shaking, did he guide her gently away from the wreckage. Rylan took Camilla to the home of one of his closest allies, a trusted member of the circle, someone who had stood beside him long before the bar, before the city learned to fear his name. Star. The moment they stepped inside, Star sensed the shift. One look at Rylan's face told him everything he needed to know. The calm in the room cracked instantly. When he learned what had happened, anger rolled through him fast and sharp. His hand struck the table, the sound echoing through the house as he made it clear that what had been done would not go unanswered. He already knew who was responsible. There was no doubt in his mind, no need for speculation. Through clenched control, Star made his position clear. Rylan had his full support. The attack on the house was not just a personal loss, it was a direct challenge to the circle itself. And challenges like that always came with consequences. Despite the fury burning beneath the surface, Star didn't let the moment stay dark for long. He assured them firmly, without hesitation, that they were safe here, that his home was theirs for as long as they needed it. No one would reach them under his roof. Not tonight. Not after what had been done. Rylan thanked him quietly, his voice low but sincere. The words were few, but they carried weight. Loyalty like this was not something he ever took for granted. As Star continued speaking, outlining what he already knew and what would come next, Rylan's focus drifted. His eyes drifted to Camilla. She sat beside him, hands folded tightly in her lap, shoulders drawn in. Silent. Guilt clung to her like a shadow, not just for what had happened but for what she sensed was coming next. And Rylan saw it all. Later that night, the house settled into silence. Camilla stood by the window, city lights stretching endlessly beyond the glass. Her reflection stared back at her, tired, fragile, unsure. She felt him before she heard him. Rylan stepped up beside her, placing a warm cup into her hands. Tea, made as close as he could get to the way she liked it. Sweet, calming, familiar. She looked up at him and offered a small, grateful smile. Even now, with everything unraveling, he was still making sure she was okay. She opened her mouth to speak. He gently stopped her. "This time," he said quietly, firmly, "you need to listen to me." Her chest tightened. "Things are about to get more serious than they've ever been. I'm going to have to take the front seat fully. And when that happens, I can't keep you here." His voice lowered. "If anything happened to you because of me, I wouldn't survive it. So I need you to do exactly what I'm about to ask." "What do you want me to do?" she asked softly, already knowing. "I want you to leave the city," he said. "Go far away from all of this." Her heart dropped. "But what about you?" she asked. "Why don't you come with me? We could leave everything behind. You could put someone you trust in charge of the bar while you're gone." He shook his head. "It isn't just the bar." His eyes darkened with quiet responsibility. There are people here who rely on me. People I protect. People who believed in me when they needed someone steady. If I walk away, the balance breaks. And when it breaks, the city suffers. His voice softened. I can't abandon them. Camilla stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him, tears slipping free. She pressed her face into his chest, holding on as tightly as she could. I understand, she whispered. I won't stand in your way. Her voice trembled. Will I ever see you again? Rylan's arms tightened around her. I don't know, he admitted. I really don't. The truth hurt more than any promise. Tomorrow I'll make all the necessary arrangements so you can go anywhere you want. As long as you'll be safe. That's all that matters to me. Now, try to get some sleep. He gently brushed her cheek before stepping away. The next day, Camilla left the city. She chose to return to the state she had once moved from. The only place that still felt familiar, the last place she had ever truly called home. It wasn't perfect, but it was known. And right now, that mattered more than anything. Rylan made sure everything was prepared before she arrived. Transportation. A place to stay. Enough money to help her settle without worrying about her next step. When he handed it to her, she tried to refuse. She knew what he had just lost. His home. His sense of stability. And yet he was still putting her first. But Rylan insisted. He knew this wasn't how either of them had imagined things would unfold. Somehow their paths had crossed at the wrong time and tied their lives together in a way neither had been ready for, pulling them off balance and forcing choices neither had planned to make. He had somewhere to fall back on. She didn't. All he needed to know was that Camilla would be out of harm's way, safe again. That was enough. They spoke every single day. It was something Rylan never expected. After everything she had been dragged into because of him, he assumed distance would eventually erase him from her life. He had learned long ago that people came and went. That was just how the world worked. But Camilla didn't disappear. With every call, every message, she became something deeper than he knew how to define. More than family. More than habit. Even from miles away, her presence stayed close, steady, grounding. And for the first time in years, Rylan felt connected to something that wasn't built on loyalty or obligation. Over the next few weeks, Rylan's circle moved with precision. Plans that had been forming in silence were finally set into motion. When the response came, it came hard, enough to shake the city to its core. The rival circle was caught completely off guard. Their structure fractured. Their influence weakened. People began to leave, choosing safety over allegiance as fear spread through their ranks. The fallout didn't stop there. Smaller groups splintered off from the chaos, each driven by its own motives. Over the next few years, scattered conflicts surfaced across the city, more frequent than ever before. The instability didn't go unnoticed. Businesses began relocating. Investors pulled back. The city's reputation shifted, marked by unrest and uncertainty. Eventually, intervention became unavoidable. New authorities were brought in. Systems were restructured. Security tightened. Oversight increased. What once slipped through unnoticed no longer had room to exist in the shadows. One by one, the circles were forced to lay low, or dissolve entirely. The city began to breathe again. As things slowly stabilized, Rylan finally allowed himself to feel relief. The people he had protected for so long no longer needed him standing between them and danger. That had always been his priority. Not power, not control, but balance. He continued running Blackwater Bar, showing up every day like he always had. But no matter what he did, one thought stayed with him, Camilla. She had always been on his mind, but now with the city calmer and his people safer, she filled his thoughts more than ever. Closer, sharper, impossible to ignore. She still talked about the future. About hope. About the possibility of them finding their way back to each other when everything was truly over. Rylan never encouraged it. The last thing he wanted was to pull her back into a world that had already taken too much from her. Then one afternoon while he was at the bar, a group of investors arrived with a real estate agent. They explained that they were expanding their operations within the city and were looking to acquire additional land, including the property the bar sat on. They made their offer clear, generous, final. They told him to think about it. And he did. He weighed everything. The city was safer now. The balance had shifted. The circles no longer ruled from the shadows. His people were free to live without fear of retaliation or power struggles. Blackwater Bar had been more than a business. It had been his anchor, his refuge, a place where he kept the chaos contained, where he watched over his people, where he held the line when no one else could. But he knew deep down that his role was finished. His work was done. So Rylan accepted the offer. And with that decision, he quietly closed one chapter of his life, fully aware that another one, long overdue, was finally waiting to begin. Camilla drove her car into the garage, just back from the grocery store. She reached for her phone and dialed Rylan's number again, but it kept disconnecting. She tried the Blackwater Bar's number, and a robotic voice repeated, "Out of service." A wave of unease washed over her. It was unusual for Rylan's number to be disconnected. For the first time since they had been apart, her calls didn't go through, and he hadn't reached out to her. Her chest tightened with worry. Carrying the grocery bags from the car, she headed toward the house when she noticed someone sitting on his porch, their back turned. "Excuse me," she called cautiously, taking a step closer. "Are you looking for someone?" The person stood and turned toward her, and her breath caught. It was Rylan. She screamed. The grocery bag slipped from her hands as she ran to him, throwing herself into his arms. "Rylan, is this really you?" she whispered, joy spilling through her voice, tears streaming down her cheeks. "It's me, Camilla," he said with a warm smile, holding her close. "I missed you so much, so I decided to give you a surprise." "It's the best surprise I've ever received, Rylan," she said, smiling through her tears. "You remembered my address. After all this time." Rylan smiled. "I saved it in my phone the day you gave it to me. I hoped that one day it would lead me back to you." Her voice trembled, her heart overflowing. "Now that you're here, you should know, I'm never letting you go again." "I don't plan on leaving," he said, smiling. Her eyes widened with uncontrollable joy. They held each other tightly, letting the moment stretch into eternity. From that day on, Rylan and Camilla lived happily and peacefully, building a life filled with love, trust, and joy. They learned that love doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it finds you only after everything else has settled. Two people from very different worlds, who never expected to be together, discovered that home was never a place, it was each other. And in that gentle certainty, they lived a fulfilling and wonderful life, side by side, exactly where they were meant to be. The end.